Wang Lin, old man will help you rescue this Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor. Tion Yunzi laughed heartily, using the shockwave from the self-explosion of his 3 bodies to force Wang Wei and Hu Wan back, preventing Wang Lin from advancing. Seizing the opportunity, he took a step forward and charged directly into the encirclement of 35 shattered Nirvana cultivators. As these cultivators were unable to divide their attention, Wang Lin transformed into a long rainbow and dove straight under the mountain peak. At the same time, a series of booming sounds erupted from within the mountain, as under the pressure of the golden lock, it not only stopped sinking but actually reversed its descent, rising by another 3 zhang. In this manner, the mountain had already risen over 7 zhang, reaching nearly 10 zhang. The elder, struggling within the azure glow, suddenly looked at Tion Yunzi, his eyes flashing with a strange light. However, he did not speak. Instead, surrounded by the azure light, he shot out with a burst, breaking free from the mountain's base. The moment he appeared, he shouted, "All members of the 4 sacred sects, unleash your divine abilities and destroy this mountain." With that, he raised his right hand and slapped it downward. Immediately, a gigantic azure dragon over 10,000 zhang long manifested behind him. The dragon carried an air of ancient desolation, and with the elder's slap, it opened its mouth, releasing a torrent of azure mist that shot straight toward the mountain. The surrounding 4 sacred sects elders, without hesitation, also activated their divine abilities, turning into an endless stream of energy and charging toward the mountain. At this moment, more and more cracks appeared in the earth, turning into shards that began to collapse and sink into the void. Space rifts around them multiplied, as if the entire world were about to be devoured. The ground-shaking sounds rang out as the attacks of the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor and all the elders caused the mountain to tremble. Large rocks fell off, and even the golden lock on top seemed to be unstable. However, the more this happened, the more grim the expression of the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor became. Just then, a long laugh echoed from within the mountain, and a crack suddenly appeared, splitting the mountain in half. Tion Yunzi shot out from within, his body filled with rare excitement. In his hand, he held a clump of black blood the size of a fist. Laughing maniacally, he soared into the sky. The illusionary golden lock suddenly turned into a flash of golden light, racing after Tion Yunzi. It landed on the clump of black blood in his right hand, sealing it as though it were a seal. Yet, Tion Yunzi paid no mind to this. As he shot out, he slapped his right hand down toward the collapsing earth below. With a deafening crash, the already crumbling ground suddenly disintegrated over a larger area. A massive vortex appeared in the void below, spinning and crushing the shards, absorbing everything into it. This slap did not just cause a fragment of the Rain Realm to collapse, but rather triggered the final destruction of the entire Renegade Immortal realm, which had been unstable to begin with. Thunderous roars filled the air, and the Rain Realm, just like the Thunder Realm of old, began to crack and collapse in succession. Wang Lin, I must thank you for all you have done along the way. If fate allows, we will meet again. By then, I will ascend to the heavenly Tao. Tion Yunzi laughed wildly as he seemed ready to depart. The newly freed Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor's eyes flashed with cold light, and with a flick of his right hand, he gestured upward. Immediately, the Azure Dragon behind him roared, and as the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor lowered his hand, the dragon shot forward, aiming to devour Tion Yunzi. At the same time, as the dragon surged forward, the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor struck his chest with his right hand, spitting out a mouthful of blood. The blood turned into a blood arrow, merging with the dragon. Instantly, the dragon's body was enveloped in a bloody light. Its roar shook the heavens, and in the blink of an eye, it neared Tion Yunzi and lunged to swallow him. The sound of an explosion shook the world. As the Azure Dragon dissipated, Tion Yunzi was hurled out. 2 cracks appeared on the seal on his forehead, blood flowing from the corners of his mouth. Staring at the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor, he chuckled hoarsely, as expected of the strongest Sacred Emperor of the 4 sacred sects. I've learned a lot. With a flicker, he vanished once more. The shattered Nirvana elders around him were about to pursue when the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor shook his head and said in a deep voice, "Let him go." This person has concealed his cultivation deeply. If we force him to explode his power, there will be too many casualties today, and it won't be worth it. Besides, I have been trapped for so long. At this moment, I am already at my limit." Upon hearing this, all the elders of the four sacred sects respectfully acknowledged his words. "You are the new vermilion bird?" The Azure Dragon's Sacred Emperor's gaze landed on Wang Lin as he spoke slowly. Wang Lin nodded and cupped his hands in greeting. "I greet the Azure Dragon's Sacred Emperor." The Azure Dragon's Sacred Emperor scrutinized Wang Lin for a long time, then nodded and said, "The four sacred sects are interconnected by blood, so I won't thank you. May I ask, what exactly was that item Tion Yunzi took from beneath the mountain?" Wang Lin frowned and asked calmly, "The blood of the heavenly Tao." The Azure Dragon's Sacred Emperor's gaze shifted to Wang Wei and Hu Wan, and his pupils contracted. He spoke slowly. "The blood of the heavenly Tao." "The blood of the heavenly Tao?" Wang Lin gasped. "Back then, I was among the first to arrive with Profound, Heavy Lord and others, right after the Rain Realm collapsed. We came seeking the inheritance of immortal arts and treasures from the immortal realm. But instead, we found many mysterious things here. It was precisely because of these things that the immortal realm was destroyed." The Azure Dragon's Sacred Emperor spoke as the area around them crumbled even more violently. Everyone immediately took to the skies, flying upward without pause. This mountain lock was originally a seal set by immortal Emperor Qinglin. A crack appeared during the immortal realm cataclysm. Back then, I was deceived by Profound Heavy Lord and entered it together with him. Something went wrong. I became trapped and couldn't escape no matter what I tried. Because of the seal's existence, only those with certain unique traits could hear my cries for help. The Azure Dragon's Sacred Emperor continued mid-flight, casting a glance at Wang Lin. "That said, under that mountain lock, I found a mass of blood. That was the object Qinglin had sealed. Despite extensive research, I never discovered its origin. It wasn't until the fourth decay of heaven and man befell me. In that state, there was no chance I could survive. In desperation, I swallowed the blood." A flicker of fear passed through the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor's eyes. "Just one mouthful, and I fell unconscious. When I awoke, I had already survived the fourth decay. But under that seal, without any heaven and earth energy, though I possessed the cultivation of the fourth decay, I was still trapped, slowly weakening as the seal drained me." "What is the blood of the heavenly Tao?" Wang Lin asked in a low voice as he flew. There was something strangely familiar about the aura of that blood. It seemed to echo the blood rust on the iron sword he had obtained, and even carried traces of the crystal power found within the ancient god's skull in the land of demonic spirits. "You'll need to ask the disciples of the immortal emperor from that time," the Azure Dragon's Sacred Emperor replied, his gaze falling on Wang Wei and Hu Wan. "So that's how it was," Wang Wei murmured to himself, a bitter expression on his face. He had long suspected there was a deeper reason behind the collapse of the immortal realm. Upon hearing the Azure Dragon's Sacred Emperor's account, that suspicion began to solidify. Roughly 100 years before the cataclysm, there was a rain of crimson in the Rain Immortal realm. This red rain was like blood, containing a strange power that Master called the blood of the heavenly Tao, who once said softly. "No one knows what the heavenly Tao truly is," Wang Wei added gravely. "But our Master believed the Tao was a living being. In the ancient days of the ancient immortal domain, there were even rumors that the heavenly Tao had perished. Even if it hadn't died, it had certainly been severely injured. What fell into the Rain realm was the blood of the Tao itself. Master collected that blood and refined it again and again, until only a fist-sized portion remained. During that time, some were made to swallow it. Every single one of them dissolved into blood on the spot and died. Since then, no one dared to ingest it again." At this point, Wang Wei shot a strange look at the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor. Wang Lin was deeply shaken, listening to these revelations he had never heard before. He couldn't help but draw in a sharp breath. Master believed that if the blood of the heavenly Tao fell into the Rain Immortal realm, then in the other three realms, perhaps other remnants of the Tao had fallen as well. Wang Wei continued, looking at Wang Lin. "It sounds unbelievable. But if you think of the Tao as a person, one who was mortally wounded, their body torn into pieces and scattered, even their essence spirit shattered into fragments. Then it starts to make sense. I don't agree with this theory, but it was the conclusion Master came to after years of research. As they conversed, the group continued ascending until they reached a platform within the gates of the Rain Realm. One by one, they landed. The Azure Dragon's Sacred Emperor's voice turned grim. The cultivator who stole the blood of the heavenly Tao clearly understands all of this. But he doesn't know one thing. I already swallowed half of that blood back then. What remains only appears whole, because it contains part of my own blood. I'm very curious to see how he plans to cultivate with that. A shadow flickered in the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor's eyes. His face twisted into an eerie smile that sent a chill through those around him. New Vermilion Bird, you'll return with me to the four sacred sects. Fill me in on everything that has happened in my absence. Since only you arrived here today, I take it the other sacred emperors are already dead, he said, his tone calm and devoid of emotion. Wang Lin quietly took a step back, moving closer to Wang Wei and Hu Wan. His voice low, he said, Senior Azure Dragon, I have urgent matters to attend to. I won't be able to return to the four sacred sects for the time being. Oh, the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor turned his gaze to Wang Lin. Wang Lin met his eyes without flinching. After a moment, the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor gave a small nod and said, Very well then. After speaking, he turned and stepped towards the massive gate of the Rain Realm on the platform. Behind him, all the elders of the four sacred sects followed suit, though a few glanced back at Wang Lin before leaving without hesitation. Even the elders of the Vermilion Bird Sacred Sect were no exception. New Vermilion Bird, remember to return the Vermilion Bird Ancient Sacred Artifact when you come back. A voice, without a hint of emotion, echoed from afar. It was the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor. Saving the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor was one of the debts Wang Lin had to repay to the Vermilion Bird Sacred Emperor. It was also to leave behind a powerful figure for the four sacred sects so that they could continue to survive in the coming chaotic times. Within the entire Vermilion Bird Sacred Sect, to be precise, except for a few elders, most people didn't truly see themselves as sacred emperors. Only the younger generation, perhaps, harbored a more genuine sense of loyalty. If Wang Lin had more time, perhaps he could slowly change this situation. However, the unease that came from Tua's son kept closing in on him, leaving him no time to waste. If he delayed further, he would end up harming the Vermilion Bird Sacred Sect and betraying the old Sacred Emperor's favor. From the moment the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor escaped, Wang Lin realized how deeply scheming the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor was, a mind too complex for him to fathom. Later, after hearing the words about the path of heaven, Wang Lin was deeply shocked. But none of that could compare to the last sentence the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor spoke before leaving. That sentence clearly told Wang Lin that the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor had seen through his intentions and didn't care at all about his identity as the Vermilion Bird Sacred Emperor. If he cared about anything, it was only the Vermilion Bird Ancient Sacred Artifact. This artifact could temporarily remain in Wang Lin's possession, but once they left the Rain Realm, it had to be returned to the four sacred sects. Perhaps if it weren't for the Elder's old age and his recent escape, the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor wouldn't wait for me to deliver it, but would have taken it right away. A bitter smile appeared on Wang Lin's face. There was actually nothing more to be said about this. It was supposed to be this way. After all, if Wang Lin wasn't to become the Vermilion Bird Sacred Emperor, he shouldn't keep the sacred artifact. In truth, Wang Lin never intended to keep it for himself, but the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor never once asked about the other three sacred emperors who had died. Moreover, he casually mentioned their deaths, as if it were a completely ordinary matter. This made Wang Lin's heart exceedingly complicated, not to mention how the Vermilion Bird Sacred Emperor had endured years of personal suffering for the sake of the four sacred sects, single-mindedly continuing their legacy. Even the White Tiger Sacred Emperor, who had fought and died for the four sacred sects, still hadn't had his body recovered. All of this seemed to be of no significance to the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor. It was as though he didn't even need to know. Situ-Nin sighed softly, patted Wang Lin's shoulder, and said, "What's this four sacred sects? Once Qing Lin wakes up, you and I will dominate the starry skies. Won't that be glorious?" Wang Lin forced a smile and nodded. My master once said that the blood of the path of heaven is an ill omen. Anyone who consumes it, if they don't die, will certainly have their nature drastically changed. The Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor, I met him once, and he was a bold man. Looking at him today, it's obvious he must have swallowed the path of heaven's blood, which is why his temperament has turned so dark. Wang Wei sighed as he spoke slowly. Although he was anxious and worried about the possible collapse of the Rain Realm, he didn't urge Wang Lin. Wang Lin sighed deeply. He knew that from the moment the Azure Dragon Sacred Emperor spoke his last words, from then on, he, Wang Lin, and the four sacred sects would have no further ties. If there were any left, it would only be the gratitude Wang Lin still held for the old sacred emperor. Wang Lin raised his head, gazing into the distance. He knelt down, lifted the hem of his robe, and bowed deeply 3 times towards the Rain Realm's gate. Old sacred emperor, your kindness will be remembered by this Xun'er for life. I will never forget it, nor would I dare to seek anything in return. If the Vermilion Bird Sacred Sect faces any danger in the future, I will, even if it costs me my life, shatter my body to help. Wang Lin raised his head, and in his eyes, the scene of the old sacred emperor's departure flickered. That kind, weary face was forever imprinted in his heart. If the pressure is too great, if the 4 sacred sects no longer have any hope of glory, if it truly is the will of heaven to destroy the 4 sacred sects, then you don't need to force yourself. The old sacred emperor's words seemed to echo in Wang Lin's ears. He silently stood up, took a deep breath, looked at Wang Wei and Huan, and said calmly, "Seniors, let's go find the sacred hall." Around them, aside from Wang Wei, Huan, and Situnan, there was also the silver-robed female corpse. She remained standing quietly beside Wang Lin, silently following. Wang Lin Huan, being a woman, had witnessed the earlier scene and knew that Wang Lin's heart was undoubtedly complex at this moment. "It's fine." Wang Lin smiled faintly, hiding the melancholy in his heart. Wang Wei nodded and leaped forward, heading straight for the platform below. Huan glanced at Wang Lin and followed behind him. Situ Nen approached Wang Lin again, patting him on the shoulder, and the two of them flew off. As for the silver-robed female corpse, she remained by Wang Lin's side, silently following. The collapse of the Rain Realm continued relentlessly. Fragments of collapsed land were scattered everywhere, with some pieces completely vanishing, turning into massive whirlpools that tore apart the remaining broken stones. The thunderous rumblings echoed, but they did not slow the group's pace. As the Rain Realm had collapsed to such an extent, they released their speed, transforming into streaks of rainbow-like light and speeding through the air like a roaring thunder. Wang Wei's gaze was sharp as lightning, searching for clues to confirm the memories of the immortal realm from years ago, navigating through the shattered pieces. After about an instant's time, his eyes narrowed. "It should be right here." Wang Wei pointed below. Wang Lin's gaze fell, and he gave a soft gasp. The fragments here were still in the process of collapsing, but beneath, he could faintly see a layer of shattered land. It wasn't just the collapsed pieces that caught Wang Lin's attention. This place was familiar to him. It was here that Zhou Yi had burned his soul to fight Sun Tai all those years ago. The Rain Realm has collapsed into countless fragments. Some overlap, and based on the position of the Rain Realm Sacred Hall back then, it should be among these overlapping fragments. Wang Wei explained as he raised his right hand and pressed downward. Immediately, a green mist formed and surged downward, causing the surrounding collapsing fragments to scatter like leaves blown away by a fierce wind. This revealed the overlapping fragments below. Without pausing, the group transformed into streaks of light and landed on the fragment continent. The land was still collapsing, and the ground trembled. If one extended their divine sense, they could see the edges of the surrounding fragments slowly shedding stone, with cracks spreading and widening under the tremors of the ground. There's not much time left. If the entire Rain Realm collapses, this place will turn into a giant whirlpool, sucking everything in. Wang Wei stamped his right foot, and the earth within 100 feet of him shattered, sending stones flying in all directions. The group sank into the crumbling ground. Before long, they pierced through the fragments and found another layer beneath them. The area was small, and the collapse hadn't affected it much. The ground's trembling had subsided, But as Wang Wei scanned the surroundings, he did not find the sacred hall. There are clearly more fragments below. He stamped his right foot again, and with a rumbling sound, the fragments began to collapse as the upper layer had. But at that moment, Wang Wei's expression suddenly changed. With a swift motion, he summoned the others to retreat quickly. As they withdrew, the ground where Wang Wei had stepped earlier cracked, but instead of the stones scattering, they all sank downward, disappearing into a deep depression. In the center of this, a massive whirlpool appeared. The whirlpool was pitch black, but to their eyes, it was clear that beneath the void, a piece of land was completely collapsing. In the midst of this collapse, a cyan palace remained unscathed and slowly drifted toward the depths of the void. In the blackness, the cyan palace stood out prominently. The Rain Realm Sacred Hall. Wang Wei's eyes immediately focused. His body shot forward, heading straight for the whirlpool, with the others following closely behind. Wang Lin stared at the cyan palace in the whirlpool, not blinking. Almost instantly, they plunged into the whirlpool. Wang Lin immediately felt a tremendous pull. Had this been before, he might have struggled, needing Wang Wei's help. But now, his left eye flashed, and a sea of fire engulfed his body, turning him into a fiery figure. With a single step, he broke free from the whirlpool and rushed towards the cyan palace floating farther in the void. The others also emerged from the whirlpool and sped towards the cyan palace. Wang Wei's eyes gleamed with excitement. He had waited for this moment for so long. The speed of the floating palace was no match for the group, and they quickly caught up. Standing close to the palace, Wang Lin's mind was shaken. Though the palace was not very tall, the cyan light around it emanated an imposing aura. On the door of the palace, a brilliantly written Qing character seemed to radiate a powerful, oppressive force. Wang Wei stepped forward, his right hand pushing on the door. Immediately, the door began to open slowly, and streams of cyan light poured out, enveloping the surrounding void and tinting it with a cyan hue. As the door opened, Wang Lin immediately stepped inside. The entire hall was vast and empty, with only a glowing cyan array flickering on the floor. Wang Wei was extremely excited, scanning the surroundings. His gaze finally landed on the array, while Hu Wan, upon entering, stood beside it. After examining it for a moment, her expression shifted. I've never seen such an array before. This array has the effect of reversing souls, allowing a person's soul to leave their body. Take out the body of immortal Emperor Qinglin. Wang Lin also lowered his head, his gaze falling on the formation as he spoke slowly. Wang Wei reached out his right hand, and immediately a crack appeared in front of him. The body of Qinglin slowly flew out from within the crack. It was still the same black armor, but there was a crimson blood dot above the center of the brow. Qinglin's eyes were tightly shut, and there was no sound. Wang Lin didn't waste words either. He tore open another crack in his storage space, and the body of Qing Shuang flew out, followed by a crystal stone. The body of Qing Shuang is facing the head of immortal Emperor Qinglin. Hu Wan immediately said. As her words left her mouth, Wang Lin had already manipulated Qing Shuang's corpse to land opposite Qinglin's body. The father and daughter's spiritual centers faced each other, arranged in a straight line. At that instant, the crystal stone that had flown out with Qing Shuang's body seemed to be drawn by a force, automatically landing between their heads, emitting a soft blue glow. This glow merged with the blue light from the formation on the ground. In an instant, the blue light within the formation flashed brightly, almost illuminating the entire surroundings. Wang Wei and Hu Wan exchanged a glance, then sat cross-legged on either side of Qinglin's body within the formation. Wang Lin, without needing any instructions from them, also sat beside Qing Shuang, recognizing some clues from his research on the forbidden formation. We're still missing one person. Let Zhou Yi replace them. After all, he knew Qing Shuang. Wang Wei said, suppressing his excitement and speaking calmly. He raised his right hand again, and with another grab, a sword light flew out from the crack in his storage space, transforming into Zhou Yi. After Zhou Yi appeared, he gazed at Qing Shuang with a soft expression. Following Wang Wei's instructions, he sat cross-legged beside Qing Shuang, but his gaze never left her. Let's begin. Hu Wan bit her lower lip and spoke softly, her heart full of anxiety. They had no time to study this formation in detail, and she had no confidence whether it would succeed. Wang Lin nodded, then turned his gaze towards Situ Nan and the silver-clad female corpse. He spoke, "Situ, protect us." Situ Nan's expression grew serious, and he nodded, saying, "Don't worry." The silver-clad female corpse, without needing Wang Lin's command, could understand his orders as soon as his thoughts moved. With Huan forming hand seals, she pointed toward the crystal stone in the middle. A beam of light immediately struck it, and suddenly, the crystal stone's blue glow flashed brightly, enveloping the entire formation. Wang Lin was very familiar with this crystal stone, having brought it out from the Vermilion Bird Sacred Sect for Wang Wei and Huan to study. At the same time, Wang Lin raised his right hand and lightly touched the arm of Qing Shuang, immediately causing a wound to appear on her arm. As his primordial force was merged and compressed, a blood arrow shot out and landed on the crystal stone. Zhou Yi, standing nearby, couldn't help but show a pained expression. He glanced at Wang Lin but didn't say anything further. At this moment, within the Rain Realm Sacred Hall, the crystal stone and Qing Shuang's blood were complete. The crystal stone absorbed Qing Shuang's blood, and immediately, a red glow flickered within the blue light, swirling around. The sounds of booming echoed as the formation showed signs of activation. In this moment, Wang Lin's eyes became sharp as lightning. He raised his right hand to form seals, and a ball of flame ignited in his left eye. Pointing at the blood at Qinglin's brow, he shouted, "Blood of the sacred artifact, gather!" Qinglin's body trembled, and the blood from his brow immediately began to squirm. With a loud bang, it detached from his forehead and flew directly toward Wang Lin. Without the sacred artifact's blood seal, a black mist instantly covered Qinglin's face, and demonic energy began to rise wildly. However, until now, the formation had only activated with a booming sound, but there were no signs of Qinglin awakening. Instead, as Qinglin's body became suffused with demonic energy, it seemed as though the ancient demon Taijia was about to reappear. This sight immediately caused both Wang Wei and Huan's expressions to change drastically, while Wang Lin's face darkened. As for Zhou Yi, he didn't pay any attention to all this, silently watching Qing Shuang. "Something's wrong. We must be missing something," Huan immediately said. "What are we missing?" Wang Wei's face tightened, his anxiety impossible to describe with words. So many hopes, and yet, at this moment, everything seemed on the verge of failure. Huan's face grew pale, staring blankly at the increasing demonic energy around Qinglin, a bitter smile forming on her face. Wang Lin's expression darkened further. Everything that needed to be done had been done. The three items were all present, but it seemed impossible for Qinglin to awaken now. The only thing that could awaken was the ancient demon Taijia. Staring at the crystal stone, Wang Lin's mind raced, but no matter how hard he thought, he couldn't figure out what was missing. "Qinglin, we've done everything to save you, so why is this happening now?" Wang Lin gritted his teeth, no longer concerned with Qinglin's status. If the ancient demon awakened now, they would all perish here. Wang Lin raised his right hand, pointing at the blood of the sacred artifact, ready to attempt sealing Qinglin once more, but without the strength of the old sacred emperor, he had no confidence in succeeding. "Master, what are we missing?" Wang Wei stood up, his face filled with anguish, as if he were on the brink of madness. Is it the blood of someone with the Wang surname that's missing?" At that moment, a hesitant, faint voice slowly came from behind Wang Lin. Wang Lin suddenly turned around, and to his shock, the silver-clad female corpse spoke for the first time. When she saw Wang Lin's gaze upon her, she immediately lowered her head. As soon as she spoke, not only did Wang Lin turn his gaze toward the silver-clad female corpse, but Wang Wei and Huan also looked at her at the same time. "Continue," Wang Lin said in a deep voice. Previously, at Flower Consort's place, she once said the master's surname was Wang, and could enter the immortal emperor's cave. The silver-clad woman spoke in a somewhat broken manner, as if she had just learned to speak. A flash of lightning suddenly struck through Wang Lin's mind. Without saying a word, he turned around, bit the tip of his tongue, and spat out fresh blood, which landed on the crystal stone. At the same time, the demonic aura on Qinglin's body reached its peak, and demonic shadows began to form. The ancient demon tower, Taijia, seemed to be awakening. However, just as Wang Lin's blood fell on the crystal stone, the formation erupted with a sudden burst of red and blue light, rapidly spinning. A tremendous suction force immediately spread out, and both Wang Wei and Huan felt their celestial energy draining away at a terrifying rate, absorbed by the formation. Within moments, both of them turned pale and weak. Wang Lin's celestial energy, which was already limited, was immediately drained. The light from the crystal became even more blinding, directly dispersing the forming demonic shadow. At the same time, with the infusion of celestial energy, the suction suddenly intensified. Wang Lin felt a blur in his vision and immediately lost consciousness. Not only him, but also Wang Wei, Huan, and Zhou Yi. Everyone fell unconscious. When Wang Lin regained his senses, he found himself in an entirely different place. His eyes narrowed as he looked around. It was a black ocean, with waves crashing and winds blowing. "You're awake." A cold voice came from behind Wang Lin. "You?" Wang Lin turned around sharply, and upon seeing the person, he couldn't help but take a sharp breath. Behind him was a woman dressed in white, her beauty breathtaking, and an overwhelming cold aura surrounded her, sending a chill through the air. If it were just her appearance, Wang Lin would not have been so shocked. But this woman was too familiar to him. She was none other than Qing Lin's daughter, the Renegade Immortal monarch, Qing Shuang. "You've been resurrected?" Wang Lin instinctively asked. "Temporarily," the woman in white replied coldly, her words sparse. Wang Lin took a deep breath to calm himself, looking around before asking, "Where are we?" "This is my father's sea of consciousness," the woman in white answered with a calm expression, gazing at the black ocean below. At that moment, two green lights suddenly appeared not far from them. Gradually, Wang Wei and Huan materialized. Huan immediately saw Qing Shuang, and her face lit up with excitement. "Qing Shuang's sister." When Wang Wei saw Qing Shuang, he paused for a moment, his expression softening with relief. "So, your soul hasn't dispersed. In that case, with Master's divine power, he can help you awaken again." Qing Shuang didn't even glance at Wang Wei. When she turned to Huan, a faint smile appeared on her cold face. "It's been many years. I'm so glad you survived the collapse of the immortal realm, sister." As she spoke, another flash of green light appeared, and Zhou Yi slowly materialized. As soon as he appeared, his body trembled, and he stared at Qing Shuang with a dazed expression, murmuring, Xun'er." Qing Shuang's gaze turned icy as she furrowed her brow, her voice like frost as she said, "Who are you calling Xun'er?" Zhou Yi froze, his expression immediately darkening. He shook his head, his voice bitter as he replied, "Xun'er is gone." Qing Lin frowned and said calmly, "I don't know how you became the new Rain Sword Soul, but since you are the Sword Soul, I won't strip you of that title. However, if you continue to speak nonsense, I won't allow you to remain as the Sword Soul." Zhou Yi shuddered as if struck by a heavy blow to his chest. His face went pale as he took a few steps back, bitterness deepening in his features, but he didn't say anything more. He merely whispered, "Yes." He knew that his Xun'er had already forgotten everything. What remained now was Qing Shuang, not his Ting. Looking at the face he had kept watch over for 1,000 years, an unimaginable pain pierced Zhou Yi's heart, causing him to tremble uncontrollably. The pain rooted itself in his body, gradually weakening him, making him unable to endure. 1,000 years of companionship, 1,000 years of waiting for the day she would awaken. But now, though Qing Shuang was less than 10 feet away, it felt as though an eternity separated them, a distance farther than life and death itself. There is a kind of distance in this world, not between life and death, but between forgetting. Wang Lin furrowed his brow, about to speak, but Zhou Yi looked at him and shook his head. No matter what, he would never blame Xun'er. Everything was his own choice. 2,000 years ago, he had done the same, giving up his sect for the sake of a corpse, which caused his master to fall ill from anger. 1,000 years ago, he had also done the same, self-immolating his soul for a corpse. He would rather die than let anyone take his Ting. At this moment, he was still the same. Despite the fact that Xun'er before him had become a stranger, despite the apparent impossibility of any longing or companionship, despite the vast gap in identity and status. Yet, he was still the same Zhou Yi from 1,000 years ago, or even 2,000 years ago. Wang Wei watched all of this and sighed inwardly. He had known it would turn out this way, but he couldn't bring himself to tell Zhou Yi. Over the years, as he got to know Zhou Yi, he had come to believe everything that happened back then. Hu Wan, soft-hearted, was about to speak. But just then, the black sea beneath them suddenly churned violently. The waves surged, pushing outward as a torrent of demonic energy erupted, sweeping across the heavens and the earth. In an instant, before their eyes, endless demonic energy rose from the ocean and gathered into a massive ancient demon. This ancient demon was so large that from a distance, it seemed to hold up the very heavens and earth. The endless demonic energy swirled around its body like a demonic dragon, roaring as it echoed across the skies. This ancient demon was none other than Tajia. At this moment, his eyes were bloodshot, and there was a scar on his forehead that hissed as the demonic energy surged into it. Even in Qinglin's sea of consciousness, you will still die. Tajia roared as he lifted his enormous right hand, instantly reaching out to grab them. The sound of the wind howled like thunder, and countless waves of demonic energy twisted around. From afar, it looked as if a black cloud descended from the heavens, ready to devour them all. At that moment, the waves of the sea once again surged, and a figure flew out from the depths. This man was in his middle years, dressed in green robes. He had a handsome appearance with an aura of immortal bearing. There was an undeniable air of authority about him, even without anger. Master. The moment this man emerged from the waves, Wang Wei and Hu Wan were both visibly moved. Father. Qing Shuang spoke with a calm and respectful tone. This man was none other than immortal Emperor Qinglan. His expression was grave, and with a slight nod, he swung his right hand forward. Instantly, a powerful gust of wind began to stir, transforming into a storm that swept across, colliding directly with the massive right hand of the ancient demon. The sound of a mighty clash rang out, shaking the heavens. The ancient demon's right arm immediately shattered, turning into countless strands of black energy, but the fierce wind summoned by Qinglin also dissipated in an instant. Qinglin, you've grown weak to this extent, yet you still refuse to yield to me? With your body, I can surpass the glory you once had. We can fuse together. What's so bad about that? Ta Jia roared in fury as his shattered right arm swiftly healed. Qinglin didn't even glance at the ancient demon. His gaze landed on Wang Lin. It seemed as though his gaze held some sort of law that could see through Wang Lin's deepest secrets. Under that gaze, Wang Lin felt as though he were completely exposed, unable to even think. But at that moment, a familiar aura surged from Wang Lin's brow and flowed through his body. In an instant, the sensation of being seen through vanished. Wang Lin's expression became calm as he looked back at Qinglin. You are worthy to inherit my Qinglin's legacy and become my final disciple. Qinglin withdrew his gaze, and with a flash of green light, he turned into a streak of emerald energy. Before Wang Lin could even react, it directly entered his body. Suddenly, Wang Lin's entire body let out a series of loud bangs. He was instantly lifted into the air, his arms spread wide. The intense pain within his body was almost unbearable, and Wang Lin felt as though he might scream out in agony. Your soul body is strong. Qinglin's voice echoed from within Wang Lin. At that moment, Wang Lin had a clear sensation. His body was no longer under his control. This was a feeling he had only experienced once in his life. That was when he had fought as the body of the scattered demon. But now, this sensation was hundreds of times more intense than back then. It was incomparably stronger, impossible to compare. The tearing feeling inside his body made Wang Lin feel as though his soul was being endlessly stretched. Your cultivation is still insufficient. Qinglin's voice once again rang out. At the same time, Wang Lin's right hand moved of its own accord, pointing at Wang Wei. Wang Wei, I need your cultivation base. Wang Wei nodded without hesitation and immediately transformed into a long rainbow, rushing into Wang Lin's body. The previous pain intensified, causing Wang Lin to let out an involuntary roar. Hu Wan, Qing Shuang, and you. Wang Lin's body trembled, but his right hand remained steady. Finally, he pointed at Zhou Yi. All of you merge into me. With Qing Shuang's voice echoing, Puan, Qing Shuang, and Zhou Yi had no hesitation. They immediately shot up into the air and merged into Wang Lin's body in the form of 3 long rainbows. At this moment, the intense pain almost drove Wang Lin mad, and his furious roar shook the heavens. I will not take over your body. Instead, I will give you strength, give you my understanding of the rules, give you all my memories of immortal arts, and allow you to personally wield the power of an empty nirvana-level battle. This is the reward for you coming to save me. Qinglin's voice gradually faded, and just as it completely disappeared, an unimaginable power erupted from Wang Lin's body, violently bursting forth. This power was so overwhelming it could make all of heaven and earth tremble, could shatter the vast starry skies of the universe. What were shattered nirvana cultivators compared to this? A single thought could erase their Tao. A single intent could bring them to their knees in submission. An intent capable of dominating heaven and earth, so immense that even the heavens would bow beneath it, was growing madly within Wang Lin's heart. Though pain still coursed through his body, it no longer registered in his mind. He could feel it clearly, an unimaginable power, one he had never even dreamed of, now belonged to him in this moment. Go forth and fight. An ancient voice seemed to echo in his mind. Wang Lin suddenly raised his head, eyes locking on the distant ancient demon. The ancient demon Ta Jia stared blankly at the scene, terror filling his eyes. Only now did he finally realize Qinglin's final trump card. That final move was the transmission of the Tao. Heaven and earth possess spirits. From self-cultivation comes the Tao. When one attains the Tao, it spreads to all living beings. This is the Tao of heaven and earth itself. Wang Lin's expression was calm, unmoved by even the slightest ripple. He raised his right hand, pointed toward the sky, and slowly spoke, Earth. As the word fell, a storm erupted within the sea of consciousness. A surge of rule power exploded outward, tearing everything apart. Even the sea that had covered the land was annihilated. In the blink of an eye, the ground beneath Wang Lin transformed into a barren yellow desert. The ancient demon Ta Jia's expression shifted again. Suppressing his fear, he roared, thrusting both arms forward at Wang Lin. Instantly, a black wind materialized out of thin air, blotting out the sky, forming vortex storms converging from all directions toward Wang Lin. At the same time, Ta Jia began chanting in an ancient tongue. His right hand reached into the void, pulling forth a massive black blade several hundred zhang long. Gripping it tightly, he swept it forward with deadly force, launching it straight at Wang Lin. But Wang Lin's expression remained unchanged. He pointed forward with his right hand. Instantly, the howling cyclones around him froze in place. Even the demon blade flying toward him halted midair, suspended motionless. Wind summoning, Wang Lin said calmly. In an instant, the heavens trembled. The black mist in the sky dispersed, replaced by a vast torrent of black wind. Within that wind, dragon shadows interwove. Not 9, but 13. 13 black dragons roared forth, charging toward the ancient demon. The sheer force behind them made Ta Jia instinctively retreat. In his pupils, 8 demonic stars revolved as he chanted more of the ancient incantation. Ancient demon art, boundary. With a low growl, his expression turned solemn. He formed a hand seal and swept his hand forward. A black line appeared in front of him, circling around his body. In that instant, it was as if the space inside and outside that line were 2 entirely different realms. A barrier had been created. No divine art from the outside could penetrate this boundary. Ancient demon art, devouring heaven. Following the creation of the boundary, Ta Jia let out another thunderous roar. Behind him, a surge of demonic aura erupted, forming a colossal, gaping maw that surged forward to devour everything. That maw was the size of the heavens themselves, capable, it seemed, of swallowing all of existence. But none of it fazed Wang Lin in the slightest. The 13 black dragons charging toward Ta Jia instantly twisted together, coiling into one another amidst the raging black wind, and in a flash, they transformed into a single black spear. This spear was pitch black, radiating waves of immortal qi as it shot straight toward Ta Jia. In Wang Lin's mind, A voice emerged, one he'd never heard before yet somehow recognized as belonging to Qing Shui. It was a message left behind, sealed long ago, meant to be revealed only once he had cultivated one of his immortal arts to the very peak. When Master by Fan's immortal art is cultivated to its utmost limit, it can take form as Master's supreme treasure. Every immortal art created by Master was fused into the very fabric of the world's laws through immense divine ritual. He once said, "Any disciple who reaches the pinnacle of his immortal art can summon forth that supreme treasure, vastly increasing the power of their divine ability." The black spear crashed directly into the devouring heaven maw surrounding Tajia. A deafening boom echoed through the heavens as the monstrous mouth was pierced and shattered completely, dissolving into a cloud of demonic aura. It could devour heaven and earth, but it could not devour the power granted to Wang Lin in this moment of Dao transmission. The might of a single divine art. Even by Fan himself, were he still alive, would have been shocked to see 13 black dragons born from wind summoning. Even he had only ever managed to summon 11 at most. The black spear pierced through Tajia's body directly, but it did not exit. Instead, it exploded violently inside, creating an unimaginable shockwave that shattered Tajia's massive body, turning it into countless strands of demonic energy that gathered together, reforming the ancient demon's body. However, his eyes were filled with even more fear, and he turned to flee. But Wang Lin would not let him escape. With a calm expression, he took a step forward and slowly said, "You can't escape. This is just the beginning. Next, let me show you what true third-step divine arts feel like." As Tajia attempted to flee, it felt as though he slammed into an iron wall. He could clearly sense that the surrounding sea of consciousness seemed to have merged with countless rules, perfectly combining into a cage. He indeed could not escape. Suddenly turning around, Tajia's eyes revealed madness. 3 of the 8 ancient demon star marks in his pupils immediately collapsed,